Hey everyone, welcome back to BlenderDiplom.com. I'm Gottfried Hofmann, and this time I want to introduce you to a cool new feature of the Blender 2.7 series, which is Volumetrics in cycles. I'm gonna walk through this by the example of this nice animated God Ray logo reveal you're seeing here. And let's first have a look at the finished scene. It's pretty simple, just a camera, a ground plane, the logo of course, and one light, which is a spotlight. And this cool volumetric effect of the volumetric lighting, we are getting this by setting up volumetrics for the world in cycles. This is the part of the tutorial that's the most important ever, and I'm really gonna dig really deep and explain each of the settings here. So in the end you should be able to do a lot more things than just this logo scene, but a lot more. So let's start. I'm gonna walk through the creation of the logo, ground plane and everything first, and then I'm gonna switch to the volumetrics. So if you want just the volumetrics part, skip over to the part by using the chapter marks on BlenderDiplom.com. And if you want to do everything, just follow ahead. So I'm gonna remove the default cube and add a plane, and edit mode as 20, just to scale it bigger. Back to object mode, and now I'm adding a text and rotating it by 90 degrees around the x-axis, and I want this text to be more clearly visible here, so I'm gonna change to the material settings and give it a material, but first I want to switch from Blender Render to Cycles Render. Now here in the Materials tab I click New and give it a name, and just a simple reddish diffuse color for now. But I also want down here the viewport color to be exactly the same, so let me just hover over this with the mouse, Control C, below here Control V, and now the color information is copied and we can see the text more clearly. Let me tap into edit mode and write BlenderDiplom. And well, the lowercase p is shooting through the floor. I don't want this. So let me fix this by using the feature small caps, which you can see here in the settings for the font. It's down here, small caps, but nothing is changing. So let me go back to edit mode and write it again, having small caps selected. And now you see the effect. It's basically using the uppercase fonts for all the letters, so also for the lowercase, and the lowercase are just a little smaller. Let me give this also some extrusion. 0.1 is okay. And here it's a little sharp, the part it's extruded, so let's bevel it a little bit. 0.05 should be okay as well here. Should be okay here. And let's also increase the resolution of the bevel to round it up. And now I got a problem again. Let me just show it. 1 and 5 to go into orthographic mode. And as you can see here, the letters are not standing on the ground. They are going below, and that is because of the bevel depth. Beveling will always happening as a growing operation. So beveling will always grow the text. So let's just fix this by hitting G and Z or C and moving the text above the ground again. So here is the text. Let's move it a little bit more to the center, GX, just somewhat like this. We can fix the correct position later. And let me select the camera. Alt-G, Alt-R to clear both rotation and scale and location. Both rotation and location. G, Y, move it over here. RX 90, and the view is set up. But it's still directly inside the ground plane. So let's move it up by hitting G and Z. Just a little bit, so it's just roughly above the plane here. And now we see we're too near to the logo, so let's hit Shift F Now we are in camera fly mode, and if I hit S, I can move it away. So this should be cool. And here, GX, and I don't like the Blender font. Let me change this to another font. Here, font, and let's move to, I'm using Roboto Bold. It's a free font, you can download it off the internet, and GX. Now I see I should go nearer once again. I want my whole world to be filled up by the volume, so I'm gonna switch over here to the settings of the world. But there is no volume tab. What shall I do? Well, I click Use Nodes, and here it pops up. Here we can plug into our volumetric effects. And I'm gonna use volume scatter. You could also use you can also plug volume absorption and emission. These are the three nodes you can plug in there. But for this effect, scatter is enough. And now let me turn on the viewport rendering. You shouldn't be able to see anything, and the reason for this is because I'm still in orthographic mode, and the volumetric effects for the world won't work in orthographics mode. So let me hit 5 on the numpad. Now I'm in perspective mode, and now if I turn on the live preview, everything should be fine. And we can already see the volumetric effect by looking at a lamp. But yeah, it's pretty strong. So let's reduce the density until we can see something. I guess 0.1 is okay. And now our lamp is lighting the scene. We can also see the logo, but it's still a little bit noisy for my taste. First thing I'm gonna turn on is homogeneous volume. This will help make the volume clean up faster and with less noise. Homogeneous, you should always use this if your volume does not have differences in densities. So it won't work for clouds, it won't work for smoke, but it will work, for example, in this case where our whole world is just filled with one kind of volume that's not changing at all. And now that we have selected volume homogeneous, we can improve the rendering even further. In volume samplings, there is a setting for homogeneous which we can change. And if I select equiangular, it should clear up a lot faster around the place where the lamp is. And that's actually what equiangular is for. If you got a homogeneous volume and you got a lamp inside the volume, which you can see, you should always use equiangular. While distance is more of a case wherein you can't see the lamp because it's not inside our viewport, inside our camera view or something like that. Usually, if it's far away, then distance will clean up faster. So you can think about it like, if your lamps are in the distance, then use distance, and if you can actually see the lamps, or if they are very near, then use equiangular. Or just play around and see which one will clean up faster. But we got still some fireflies, and I want to remove those by setting in light path the volume bounces to 0. And now the volume is cleaning up really, really fast, as you can see. And it's time to place the lamp near our text. G, Z, or C, GX to place it there. I will actually turn the X location to 0. So it's perfectly centered. And maybe a little bit more farther behind. And now let's have a look. Well, GZ, how it is looking now. And we can already see this cool effect here. We are aiming for this, let's call this shadow rays. But if I look at it from the front, you won't really be able to see them. You can roughly see them right here, but they're very subtle. And the reason for this is camera is looking from here, and behind there is all this bulb of volume. So even if here are shadows, behind there's still light. And I want a lamp that is only shining light into this direction. And you all know this kind of lamp, it's a spot lamp. So let's select spot. And oh, what's happening? Well, solid view shows us that the spot lamp is actually shining through or downwards. And let's just fix this by hitting Alt R, and then RX 90 minus, perfect. Now it's shining into the right direction. Let's look at it from the front. And it's by far not as strong as the effect now as it was with the point light. So let's increase the strength. We can select use nodes. And here under strength, I'd say 2000. And here we got our effect. Pretty cool, right? I'll also give this a bluish tint. And if I increase the size now, the shadows will be sharper. So this is something up to you to decide. For this effect, I usually like it when the shadows are a little bit sharper, so 0.03. And once this is clearing up, the shadows will be nice and sharp now. There's just one setting I still want to change for the lamp. And this is this bright spot here in the middle. It's really taking the viewer's attention, and I want the attention to the text and not to this very bright spot in the middle. What can we do here? Of course, we could reduce the strength, but then everything would be darker. Well, I found a way to get rid of this spot. It's using magic from the nodes in cycles. So let's switch to compositing. And here, this symbol here will show us the material nodes. And let's also turn on the live preview. And here we got this ugly, very bright spot. How can we get rid of this? Well, let's use the following node. It's under color and it's called light fall off. Let me first copy the strength over to the strength here. And now let me connect quadratic with the strength here. Now nothing should have changed. But here we have the setting smooth. If I turn this up, then this bright spot is magically disappearing, and 0.1 is already enough. And the reason for this is that smooth is actually saying that if you're very near to the lamp just shouldn't be as bright as it normally would be. And usually use this in architectural rendering if you have a light near a wall or a ceiling, so to reduce noise, but you can also use this for effects like this. So this is it for the lamp. Let's go back to the default, and I still want to change this a little bit because I want the rays to shoot more upwards a little bit. And I can do this by rotating the lamp. R, X, a little bit, and then GZ. Or actually not by rotating the lamp, as you can see it. R, X. Rotating the lamp won't change the direction of this rays here, but more by GZ, moving it downwards a little bit. Closer to the ground. Now we should also have some rays that are, or shadows that are going upwards. So this is already looking pretty good. And the next thing I want to do is I want the BlenderDiplom logo to be visible a lot better. I want it to be lit. And the way I'm going to do is I'm going to use an effect of the cycles volumetrics that is pretty cool. The trick I'm going to use is I'm going to change the value for anisotropy to a negative one, say minus 0.4. And now you can see the BlenderDiplom logo is lit a lot better, while everything else ain't lit as well. While the light has become dimmer. And let me go here and check the lamp settings, because I guess the lamp ain't big enough, the spot size. Let me say show cone, and I can already see it here. We need to make the size a little bigger. Let's look at it from the top, because it should be just outside of the logo. 5. As close as possible. GX, so. And now let's look at it again from the front. And turning on the anisotropy to minus minus 0.4 has actually made our logo lit, while everything else got dimmer. Let's set it to 0 again. And now the logo just ain't lit as good, but the rays are brighter. And now let's set it to a positive value, let's say 0.9. And now things are very bright in the center, but not so much in the outside, or 0.4 plus 0.4, you will have the same effect. And how is this working? Well, this is actually pretty interesting. Let me show it by using the grease pencil. Our camera, let me first show you the effect at a 0 anisotropy. Our camera, it's here, you can see it, but it's here, it's shooting rays. And it's shooting rays into this direction. Bang, bang, bang. Now there is volume in here, so if our ray is shooting and it's hitting a volume particle, then it will be ejected into any direction. It's random, it's selected randomly. This is when you don't have anisotropy. So just shoot the rays shooting into random directions once they hit a volume particle. But if I, wait a moment, let's remove the driver, Alt D and Alt D. If I set this to a positive value, say 0.9, then the rays from the camera are shooting, they're hitting a particle, and then they will be shot or travel further in the direction where they have already been traveling. So they will be a little bit moving a little bit to the left or to the right, to the top or to the bottom, but just a little bit. So they won't, for example, never go into this direction when anisotropy is set to a positive value. And if we set this to a negative value, minus 0.4, for example, then the following thing is happening, or let's say minus 0.9. Then the following thing is happening. The rays will travel and bounce back. That's why you can't really see the light source anymore. But why is the BlenderDiplom logo lit? Well, let's say a ray is traveling and it's not hitting a volume. Then it will hit the logo and bounce back. Now it's traveling into this direction. If it's hitting a volume particle now, then it will travel to the opposite direction. And this is the trick why we can light our logo from behind using this anisotropy. And of course, this setting here is a little bit extreme. But for example, if we set it, for example, to minus 0.4, then we have the best of both worlds. Our logo is lit from behind, and we can still see the rays from the light source. And of course, now we should turn up the light still a little bit more. Let's say strength 5000 maybe. And here we got this effect thanks to our cool setting of anisotropy. And the next thing I want to do is I want to animate the light and then a little bit of compositing, changing the materials of the logo, and then we're done. For the animation, I want to set the first keyframe at the very end. That will be frame 200, because this will be our final still. So let me set the keyframe, but only for the Z rotation. Insert single keyframe, so we can later change the other rotations if we run into problems. And another thing I want to keyframe is the spot shape. So let me set the keyframe here again, hit I, and hover over this small little slider here. And then let's move over to, let's say, frame 125 or 140. And I first want to reduce the spot shape size until roughly two of the fonts are lit. And you see, I need to rotate Rx, but this is not affecting our animation because I only keyframed the Z rotation. And here, Rx, this is roughly the right rotation, I guess. And now we got here BlenderDiplom. I guess I can even make this smaller a little bit. And now let me hit I to insert a keyframe here as well. And here I want the rotation to be on this side, so R, C, and let's move this over here, really to the brink, and insert single keyframe. And now let's move over to this frame here, frame 1, R, C, and over here. Insert single keyframe, and now let's have a look at it from here. Now this is gonna move over and then light everything. Before I do the compositing, I'd like to optimize the shader of the BlenderDiplom logo a little bit. You see here that we have a ray before the diplom, but I'd like this effect to be a little stronger. And I can do this by adding a little bit of gloss to the material. So the rays we got here, the light part of the rays, is actually mirrored on the logo, which will look pretty cool. So let me add a shader, glossy, turn the roughness down quite a bit, and the color should be completely white. Shader, mix them together. And now you can really see the effect here of the light and of the rays that are lit quite nicely, that they are mirrored now in the logo, which is pretty cool. And I think that the effect is a little bit extreme, so let's reduce it until it's cool. I'm changing the factor value. This will mean more diffuse, less glossy. And I guess this is okay now, so let's do the rendering now. For compositing, we are already in the right window layout, but it's actually here behind this symbol. I select Use Nodes and Backdrop, and if I Shift Control click on the render layers here, you see a viewer node has popped up, and now we got the output of this node here in the backdrop. Let me hit V a couple of times to scale it smaller. And what I want to do is I'd like the rays to fade out in this area around it in a kind of ellipse. And I can simply do this as a post-processing step by adding a vignette. Let me add a matte ellipse mask. And now let's take a look at it. This is how the ellipse mask is looking by default. It's kind of small, so let me increase the width up to 1. And if I increase the height up to 1, it's too big. It should be, I want it definitely smaller, so it's roughly, or it's exactly inside the screen we got here. Our render resolution is 16 by 9. So if you enter 9 divided by 16 here in the height, it fits perfectly. Now let me blur this by filter, blur, and I will select fast Gaussian because I want to blur it quite a bit. Then here relative, and 20% in both directions. Both directions should be cool. And I can mix this with the image above by using a color mix node. And by just mixing it, nothing is changing, but if I select multiply here, then we got our effect, because multiply will basically darken only and the light player parts will stay the same. And the factor value here will change how strong the effect is. I'll reduce it a little bit so it's not completely black at the edges. Here, after that, I want to add a filter or a distort node called lens distortion. And here I will only use the dispersion, just a tiny bit, to add the effect as if this was shot with a cheap lens. Let me connect the output of lens distortion to composite, and now if I mute this, here in this area you should see the difference this effect is making. So it's very subtle, but it will really add realism to your shots if you add a little bit of lens distortion. And one thing we can do in front is we can still color correct this. And for this, I want to use color hue correct. And the reason for this is because I got this red logo and the bluish background, and so I can selectively change the colors of the logo. Here, if I go into this area and just increase this a little bit, then below here you should see a difference. Let me mute this once again. And now you can see the effect that the saturation of the logo has been increased. And this way we can make it pop a little more, so it's more readable without affecting everything else. So this concludes the compositing part and thus also the tutorial. Now it would be time to render. You should render, of course, an animation and set the dimensions. I usually set 720p, but of course full HD is even cooler, even though it takes longer to render. And here in the output you can set where you want to render it, and usually I render into a PNG sequence, and later on I will make a movie out of this using the video sequence editor. This concludes the tutorial. Don't forget to connect the composite output with the last node in our tree, that is the lens distortion one. And for some reason the vignette has been changed. Something has changed, but you got the picture when you did the tutorial. So I really hope you learned something, and I really hope now you get an idea of what you can do with the volumetrics in cycles. If you use this technique, please go over to BlenderDiplom, go into the comments and post your results. I'm really eager to see what people are doing with the things I'm teaching them. And don't forget, do try this at home.